Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Let's End It Here. A few years back, I was on an interview panel recruiting for an IT specialist position in our company. The interview process was pretty standard: a series of HR-type questions, a technical test, and a presentation of a scenario. If you've worked in IT, you will be familiar with this. As we worked through the list, we saw some good candidates and some who really were out of their depth. Then in came that candidate. You can usually tell by their overconfident attitude and their body language as they sit down. As you would expect, this was a guy. He came in, fixed each of us with an intent look, sat down, leaned back in the chair in what I've seen as a power position, and the interview started. The HR questions went okay. We went through his CV and discussed previous roles. I probed a little deeper on some of his answers as they started to have the odd hole. We got to the end of that, and I said we were going to move on to the technical section of the process. At that point, he said, "I can save you some time on that. Here are all my certifications. I don't do contrived tests when I have better skills than anyone here." With that, he placed a stack of certificates on the desk. I'd never seen such arrogance in an interview and was taken aback for a moment. The person from HR stepped straight and said, "Thanks for those details, we will take note of that, but everyone who comes for a role here is treated equally. Part of our process is a technical test, and this has been explained to you by the recruitment agency." The chap responded, "Yes, but I explained to the agency, these tests are pointless and I will not be doing it. If you insist on this, then you can terminate the interview." Fine, I was more than happy to comply with his request. I said, "Thank you very much for coming in. I will get the security officer to escort you out." We stood up and left him waiting in the meeting room for security. His power pose had gone and he looked totally shocked. The compliance with his request was probably not that malicious on our part. I just followed our company policy on equality in interviews. But I got a real sense of satisfaction seeing his bluster and arrogance evaporate. He was less than complimentary about us to the recruitment agency, but we were completely open and honest about the events with them. I gather they choose to stop putting him forward for interviews very soon after that. The next story is called Don't Mess with the Ward. Years ago, I worked as a registered nurse in a high dependency ward. Whereas on a normal surgical ward for a morning shift you would get 6 to 8 patients, on our ward you get a maximum of 3. Think involved patients with multiple conditions. We had a pretty high turnover of staff, about 50% per annum, with the average time someone stayed with us being 12 months. Some left after a year because they could get easier and better paying jobs elsewhere. Some left because of the workload. I left after 3 years because I moved 200 kilometers away. But 2 people were constant on our ward. One was one of our ward's persons, not the object of the story, and the other was our ward clerk, Sue. Sue had been there for years and she was really good at her job. She knew how the place ticked. One morning shift, Sue got absolutely upbraided by one of the new RNs on our ward. Whatever it was about, it wasn't actually important. And I was there. I was well past my 12 months there, so I was an oldie. The organizational culture on that ward was that we were a team. It was not unusual to come back after one of those shower trips to find that for your other patients, other nurses had already started or done everything. You didn't have to ask, it just happened. You did the same for the next person when they were tied up. That's just how the place was. Best ward ever. That team approach extended to the wardies and the admin team. They did their work so you could concentrate on yours. You looked after them and they looked after you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the admin officer on a ward can wield power. You may not think it, but they can. Anyway, Sue got roasted over something that didn't matter. And the new nurse finished off with, "You just concentrate on doing your admin job and I'll do my job as a nurse." Mistake. Such a big mistake. Those of us who had been there for a while on that day took a mental note. Sue would not let this one slide. The next day we had almost the same team on deck. Normal weekday morning, busy ward. In the middle of everything else, a theater orderly shows up for one of the RN patients to take them to the theater. But they aren't ready. The one person who could answer the phone didn't pass the message that the theater was coming down for the patient for surgery. We watched with amusement, side eyes, as the RN dropped everything to try and prep the patient while the orderly waited. A quick shower with chlorhexidine soap, run through the pre-op checklist, the whole shebang. We made sure her other patients were looked after, but there wasn't any way we were going to get involved between her and Sue. Just as some 15 minutes or so of work was finished in 5 minutes, Sue comes around the corner before the wardie heads off with the patient. She says, "Oh, theater has called for your patient. I was going to come and let you know earlier, but I got caught up with my admin work. I see they are here, so I leave it to you." Didn't wait for an answer or reply, just spins on her heel and goes back to her desk and phone around the corner. It was beautiful. The RN didn't last much longer, but Sue did, until the ward was closed a few years later. I still miss that ward and the people after 24 years. The last story is called I Can Wait. I worked at a great engineering place for a few years. I ran a small team, doing hands-on work often directly for design engineers. We got a new manager, who turned out to be a total disaster, and particularly hated the close and casual communication between my team and design. Felt it was going over his head. He first put rules in place requiring going through several people to relay issues back to design and similar fudge. My team was cut down to just me and one other quite new guy. We weren't hugely busy, so the main trouble being if I went on holiday, I'd come back to a lot of rework. He also did clever things, like standing outside the toilets to ensure nobody washed their hands before breaks. We had some oily work for some guys, so washing could take a few minutes. Instead, everyone washed up 20 minutes early, then did nothing until the break. So in quiet periods, I started grabbing a spare computer and typing up work instructions. Not surprisingly, Super Manager couldn't resist making comments on this. But when I explained the issue, he said that I shouldn't just make work instructions. He promised me that he would send me the official work instruction format. He never did, but I shrugged it off and said nothing. Q months later, and the company was bought out by an international firm, and the inevitable major redundancies happened. My name was high on his hit list, I was sure. Even though everyone else was sure I was safe and essential, especially with my team being just me by then. Anyway, sure enough, I was made redundant. I had a fantastic exit interview and one of the principal engineers had offered to attend with me. Super Manager and HR listed off some laughable reasons to make me redundant. Things like me rearranging doctor's appointments to stay late, or me coming into work the night shift on a holiday. I still don't know how they thought this made sense. After that, I just quietly listed off the various roles I was solely covering for them, technical skill sets like fiber optics and HV, etc. Then I happily accepted my redundancy payout and signed off IP and such. The Super Manager, not feeling entirely comfortable with the looks the principal engineer was giving him, asked me for the work instructions. I had to answer, "Oh, you told me to stop writing them until you gave me the format you wanted." They rang me and offered for me to come back, but I politely declined. I heard later that they had to hire 3 people to cover my work. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.